Okay, so I'm making this video for an add-on that I created for Blender in which we can bake textures within this add-on. There are 3 functionalities in it. The first one is quite basic, in which we can bake different types of PBR textures, such as normal, diffuse, emission, and roughness, etc. The way to use it is, as you can see, I have 2 types of meshes, one low poly and one high poly. Right now, I've assigned some materials to the high poly. Now, I'll place the low poly on top of the high poly so that they overlap. First, I'll select the high poly, then hold Shift and select the low poly. Once both are selected, I'll click on Bake Texture Maps. When the drop-down opens, we see at the top the settings. Below that, there's an option Use Auto Cage. When you tick this, it automatically creates a cage for baking. Then we have Bake Resolution, Final Resolution, and Samples. Here, we also have an option called Save Prefix where you can enter any prefix. So whatever textures are generated will be saved with that prefix. And if you leave it blank, it will use the name of the object as the prefix. Here, in slot 0, a drop-down shows up in which we can stack any texture maps for baking. Pressing the plus button adds more slots, and we can bake different texture maps together, as we are about to do now. Now you can see I've selected 3 texture maps. And here it shows in the active selection I have this object. Selected high poly is this object. Now as soon as I click Bake Texture Maps, it automatically baked all the textures for me. In the shading editor, you can see it has baked them and given them to us. If we open this tab and here open the image editor and check, we'll see diffuse, roughness, they have been baked. On the low poly, all the details from the high poly are now there. And this is our first function. Now, if we want to save the baked textures, we click Pack Textures. It will then show below which folder it saved them in. We can directly open that folder from here, and you can see that it saved all the textures in one folder with a prefix. Since we didn't enter any prefix, it used the object's name as the default prefix and saved it like that. Alright, so the second texture map that I will now show is the curvature map. This map cannot be directly created inside Blender, but there are some workarounds with which we can generate a curvature map while staying within the Blender environment. I've noticed that many people use Substance Painter for curvature maps, and since that's a paid software, I've included this feature in the add-on so that users can generate a curvature map within Blender itself. Generating a curvature map using this add-on is very easy. We'll click on the curvature map drop-down, and below, some options will appear. At first, I recommend keeping these options at their default values. Then, click on the object to show which one is currently active. To preview the curvature map, press the Preview Edge Mask button. This will create a node setup in the shader editor that helps detect edge masks on the object using the bevel node. To preview the edge mask, go into Render Viewport mode, and you'll see that even with the default values, it highlights the edges quite well, which will also help in our curvature map. We can also bake it from here by clicking Bake Edge Mask, but before that I want to show you how tweaking these values makes a difference. In my experience, just increasing or decreasing the bevel radius brings significant changes. There's no real need to change the min and max values. Once you're satisfied with the settings, you can click Bake Curvature Map. And here, you can see that we now have a curvature map generated, where the areas showing curvature are black and the rest of the object is white. And that's basically the whole process for generating a curvature map. Now it's time to talk about Color ID. While making this video, I'm assuming that you already know about Color ID. So, I'll only show you how you can generate a Color ID using my add-on. If we focus on this icon, we can see that some steps are listed here. If we follow these steps, our add-on will generate a Color ID for us. The first step is to assign some materials to the high poly model. In the second step, we will bake a diffuse map onto the low poly model. And in the third step, the colors that we assigned on the high poly model will be grabbed, and using them, we will generate an ID mask for the low poly model. This will help us select the separate colors and assign PBR textures to each ID. So first of all, I'll click this drop-down and select the high poly model. After selecting the high poly model, I'll go into Edit mode and assign it some materials. To assign the first material, I'll select some faces and click Add Material. Here we can see that a material has been added inside the Material Properties panel. Now, this option, if we click it, it will assign the selected faces to the material. Clicking it, I assign it a red material. Now, because it's the first material, it has applied one color to the entire model. But as soon as we add a new material, select New Faces, and assign them, we can see that it has separated them. I assign green color to this, and similarly, I give a third color to these faces. I assign all of these a single material for the sake of this tutorial, so we can proceed quickly. After clicking this, I click Add Material and assign it. Then I assign it blue. Some faces are left here, so I'll select them too, including the inner ones, and assign them as well. So now we have 3 separate colors assigned. Now the second step is to bake a diffuse map. For this, I'll place the low poly model over the high poly model. I'll select the high poly, then the low poly, and I've selected the diffuse map. Now I'll bake the texture. We can now see that it has baked the diffuse map for us. Now I'll go back to Color ID. The third step is grab colors from high poly. As soon as I click it, we can see it has grabbed the same colors for the low poly model. After grabbing them, the next step is Build ID Mask. When I click this, it will generate separate materials for each ID on the low poly model. Now we can see it has created a node setup and placed each ID into a separate frame to increase readability. Here, if we change the color of each ID, we can see it reflects on the corresponding area, and all of this is happening on the low poly model. This is our low poly model where all these changes are taking place. We can see that these are exactly the same faces that we assigned on the high poly model. The next step is to assign a PBR texture to each ID. For that, we'll select any one ID. Let's do the red one. After selecting the ID, we'll go and select slots for our texture maps. Then we'll select the map type and choose the images from our PC. I'll assign a wood material to red. So here, the base color is assigned. This is roughness, so I'll assign the roughness map. Then I'll assign the base color again. For normal, I'll assign the normal map. When I click Generate PBR for this ID, I need to make sure the ID is selected. Now we can see it has assigned the PBR material to our ID. I hadn't selected the back faces yet, but if I had, it would have assigned the same PBR material to them too. I can also demonstrate this to you. I'll select the high poly, and we can see with the help of the high poly that the back area was entirely red, so it assigned the red PBR texture to it. Now I'll assign the next ID its PBR texture. Here I've selected the slots and chosen my texture maps, and now I'll assign rock to the blue one, base color, normal, and roughness. Generate. Now we can see it has assigned that material. In the same way, I'll assign a PBR texture to the next ID. I'll assign a gold PBR texture, metallic, base color, normal, and roughness. When I generate it, we can see that the gold PBR has been assigned to the blue ID. Now the real fun part is about to begin. I've removed the gold from the blue ID and assigned wood instead, because what I'm about to do now would have been hard to see since the gold was too shiny. As we know, the color ID is used for trim sheets and game assets too. So with this add-in, we've done a basic setup of the color ID, but we can see that on the low poly model, the high poly curvature isn't showing yet. One way to bring it in is to go up and also bake an ambient occlusion texture. After baking it, we save it somewhere. Once it's saved and everything is set up, we can go into each ID and create a new slot. By selecting ambient occlusion there, we choose the high poly ambient occlusion and apply it. Then, for each ID, we generate the PBR again. After doing this, we can see that the curvature and shadows have now appeared on the low poly model as well. And if these shadows look too dull to us, there's an easy way to fix that, since the ambient occlusion texture is being multiplied ahead with this node. To darken it, we duplicate the same node and attach it ahead. In our RGB red channel, we connect it to color 2, and here we can see that our curvature is now darker too. We can do the same process for each ID as well, but this is only if we want our shadows to be darker. Otherwise, it's not necessary. And the default setup that this add-in gives us can also be used. You'll find the download link in the description. If you face any issues while running it, my email is included with the add-on. Just reach out, and I'll be happy to help you sort out any errors.